Hello, friends, and welcome to our streaming services. If you're with us on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to get notifications when we have new videos. If you're with us on Zoom, welcome. Drop a hello in the chat. We'd love to say hello back. And if this is your first time here, go ahead and sign the guest book at oakcliffuu.org/guest. Today's sermon, Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, and Us, with Tanner Trask. All right, so let's check in on this week's repairs. As you see here, Kenneth Jackson has been working diligently to replace some water-damaged walls on the Hope Building. Kenneth, thank you so much. Don't know what we'd do without you. Everybody give Kenneth a big old thanks next time you see him, or just hello there in the chat. Just thank you, Kenneth. All right, craft supply sale is coming up, and there is still time to help out. If you'd like to donate items, remember all proceeds go to the church. So if you are an artist and you have some artistic, crafty stuff and supplies sitting around your house that you know you're probably not going to use and you'd like it to go to good use, then donate it to us. We're taking donations through October 3rd on campus at church. So if you would like to donate, please do that. If you would like to donate your time, we'd also love that. Make this event a big success. This should be a lot of fun, I think. This is the inaugural event for Craft Cycle Dallas. So this is our chance to get in the beginning and have a lot of fun with this. So if you would like to donate your time or your supplies, or if you just want more information, go ahead and email Donna at fundraising@oakcliffuu.org. I know she would love the help. A lot of people have expressed wanting to do something about SB 8, the abortion bill, and a lot of people are very angry and feeling kind of helpless. And so if you are just wanting to channel all of that energy, all of that anxious energy into something productive, we are having a Zoom gathering today to discuss how we can help. It'll be with Janine, who you know has been very outspoken and very active in this area. So if anybody can help us help out, it would be her. If you would like to join, that is today at 2 o'clock, and the link is in the e-blast. Okay, so as many of you know, last month we lost a very, very important member of this church. We lost our final founding member, Elaine Wildman, and she was this kind-spirited, wonderful woman, and I know that she's just going to be so missed, and is already so missed by so many. There will be a memorial at church on October 3rd at 1 o'clock for anybody who would like to join and say their goodbyes. But it will also be live streamed for those of you who cannot make it or don't feel safe going. So watch out in the e-blast, the upcoming e-blast, for more details on Elaine's memorial. All right, in addition, the e-blast is everything you need. So head on over to get updates on the Craft Cycle event, on meetings, on Beth's message to the congregation every week about everything going on with the church. The Halloween event that we have going on October 30th is on there as well if you want to get a head start on that. COVID protocols, everything. Just go check out the e-blast. If you're not signed up, sign up. If you are signed up, read it. It is Sunday, so we do have, you don't have to go anywhere. It's Sunday. You can stay right here. At 11:15, we have Talk Back. At 1 o'clock, we have Adult RE. If that's not enough for you during the week, then we also have the UUCOC Social Hour on Discord, Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. And for now, we are suspending the Friday night one. So everyone head on over to Discord. Tuesday nights at 7. All right, let's end these announcements on just a super positive beat, right? So would you like a good member anniversary? I bet you would. Well, guess what I've got? I've got a great member anniversary. So celebrating her 24th year at UUCOC everybody, hands up, shake those hands, give a celebration. Happy UUCOC anniversary. I got too excited. To Emily Brock. Such a wonderful member of our congregation, and we are very happy to have you. If you're showing a picture, Scott, maybe show a picture of one of her goats too, right? She loves those goats. I miss hugging you, Emily, so we'll get back to that at some point. All right, everybody, that is it. So to each and every one of you, I hope that you have a happy week and a very happy Sunday.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff. Thank you for having the curiosity and the courage to join us. Thank you, whoever you are, whatever spiritual tradition, gender, age, race, sexual orientation, or background you may bring to our community. We hope you will find here comfort, connection, challenge, respect, and above all, love.
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of love, compassion, and forgiveness.
Que esta luz que ahora encendemos nos inspire a usar nuestros dones y poderes para sanar y no para herir, para ayudar y no para impedir, para bendecir y no para maldecir, para servirte a ti, espíritu de amor, compasión y perdón.
Come into this circle of love and justice by Marilyn Sewell. Come into this circle of love and justice. Come into this community where we can dream and believe in those dreams. Come into this holy space where we remember who we are and how we want to live. Come now and let us worship together.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who speak here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regret, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us. As we give, we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
Please join your voice to mine in affirming our congregation's spiritual covenant. Because we love one another, we honor each individual's spiritual journey. We celebrate life's abundance and service to each other, our community, and the world. We connect with each other in love, respect, and acceptance. Thus do we covenant together.
And now in Spanish. Porque nos amamos uno al otro, honramos el viaje espiritual de cada individuo. Celebramos la abundancia de la vida en el servicio a entre sí, nuestra comunidad y el mundo. Ponemos en contacto a unos con otros en el amor, respeto y excepción, así que hacemos pacto.
We share our sorrow with one another, believing that a sorrow shared is a sorrow halved. Today, we also hold in our hearts the shared grief of our hurting planet. At this time, we invite you to publicly post your sorrows and prayer requests to our Zoom chat or send those to our Facebook Messenger.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
We also share our joys with one another, believing that a shared joy is a joy doubled. Today, we take special time to celebrate our connection to all life everywhere. Please share your joys publicly in the Zoom chat or send those to our Facebook Messenger or speak those aloud.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stems of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
On April 14, 1876, a crowd gathered to dedicate the Freedmen's Monument in Washington, D.C. The statue was funded solely by donations from freed slaves. The statue features Abraham Lincoln standing with his hand on the Emancipation Proclamation, the document which freed the enslaved people of this country. Next to him, a black man rises, the chains that used to bind him broken at his feet. Frederick Douglass dedicated the memorial. Ulysses S. Grant was on the stage with him, and today's reading comes from part of Frederick Douglass's dedication that day. It must be admitted, even here in the presence of the monument we have erected to his memory, Abraham Lincoln was not, in the fullest sense of the word, either our man or our model. In his interests, in his associations, and in his habits of thought, and in his prejudices. He was a white man. He was preeminently the white man's president, entirely devoted to the welfare of white men. He was ready and willing at any time during the first years of his administration to deny, postpone, and sacrifice the rights of humanity in the colored people to promote the welfare of the white people of this country. Though the Union was more to him than our freedom or our future, under his wise and beneficent rule, we saw ourselves gradually lifted from the depths of slavery to the heights of liberty and manhood. Can any colored man, or any white man friendly to the freedom of all men, ever forget the night which followed the first day of January 1863, when the world was to see if Abraham Lincoln would prove to be as good as his word? I shall never forget that memorable night, when in a distant city I waited and watched at a public meeting, with 3,000 others not less anxious than myself, for the word of deliverance which we have heard read today. Nor shall I ever forget the outburst of joy and thanksgiving that rent the air when the lightning brought to us the Emancipation Proclamation. And in that happy hour we forgot all delay and forgot all tardiness. Hi, I'm Tanner Trask. I'm a Unitarian Universalist member of Westside UU over in Fort Worth. My wife and I have been UUs for a little over a decade now. And I've started taking a few classes in seminary, so hopefully one day, be a minister. So I wanted to talk about a few things today that had to do with Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln and sort of the rest of our country's history and our history as Unitarian Universalists. So, quick intro. Frederick Douglass was... other quick thing. I have really bad allergies right now. I'm trying very hard not to sneeze, so apologies ahead of time. Frederick Douglass was born in 1818 in Maryland. His parents were enslaved, and their owners enslaved Frederick at birth. He escaped to the North about 20 years later and became a staunch abolitionist and a supporter of women's rights. And he was almost 60 years old when he gave that speech I just quoted from. Now, I should mention that Douglass was not a very big fan of the Freedmen's Memorial to Lincoln. He would have preferred a statue with a black man standing tall, not one still on his knees. There has been some modern controversy about the statue as well. Now, when I was a younger man, I would have bristled at his description of Abraham Lincoln as the white man's president, having the prejudices of a white man. That's not fair, I would have said. He freed the slaves eventually, and he never owned any slaves. But if I was being honest with myself, I would have overlooked the times Abraham Lincoln said that he would allow slavery to continue if it would save the Union. The times he said that there would have to be a superior race in America, and he would prefer it to be the white race. Now, does that make him as bad as Jefferson Davis, the traitorous president of the Confederacy? Did that make him as bad as Thomas Jefferson, who owned people while writing about how terrible slavery was? No. But how do we judge historical figures when it comes to racism, to sexism, to homophobia and transphobia? And how will we judge ourselves? So I'd like to ask that if anything I've said so far, or anything that will come after, makes you bristle the way I would have, please give me a few minutes to make my entire point. I will be coming by the talkback after the service, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have then. Also, I promise that this reflection will not end with some recitation of our sins, with a condemnation of our church and our denomination. There's no twist ending here where I will pull aside the curtain to reveal that we Unitarian Universalists were the bad guys all along. We do have decisions we'll need to make as a community, and we will be holding to our principles when we make them. Well, our principles and Robert's Rules of Order. But why am I here talking about this? About our history with civil rights? And by I mean a white man speaking at a church of a mostly white denomination. Put simply, it isn't anything minority groups have done that caused them to be oppressed. It is the majority group oppressing them. Without oppressors, Frederick Douglass would not have been born to enslaved parents. Rosa Parks would not have been arrested for keeping her seat on a bus. And the Stonewall Inn would not have been raided by the police, and its patrons would have been free to live their lives. Instead, The legacies of racism, slavery, and sexism still haunt the modern days of our country. Everything from white supremacists and anti-Semites marching openly in our streets, to property in majority black neighborhoods being valued less than similar properties in majority white neighborhoods. Now, the work of building our beloved community is not done yet, and we need to realize that minority groups, any minority group, cannot be guaranteed their rights as human beings without the support and effort of the majority. We cannot ask that all of the work, the emotional work, the intellectual work, the spiritual work, be done only by members of the community that is asking for recognition. If we want true justice in our society, we all have to work too. So am I saying that all of this is the fault of every white person in America, that white people are the enemies and the bad guys? No, of course not. This isn't some one side versus another thing, or at least it doesn't have to be. Now, before my wife Melissa and I got married, we sat down with our church's minister emeritus, Dr. Russell Elevin, for a few pre-marriage counseling sessions. I'm not going to talk about most of them today. But one of the things that we talked about was looking at the problems that we were facing together in our lives, not as a me versus her versus me, one of us is going to be right and one of us is going to be wrong, but instead as a both of us together as a team against the problem that we're facing. So a little bit further back in my history, going to church as a child, one of the things that never sat right with me when I grew up in the Congregational church was the concept of original sin. That my parents had sinned, therefore I was a sinner. Now, the first Congregational church of Wauwatosa, Wisconsin wasn't a very fire and brimstone kind of place. They taught us about original sin in Sunday school class, and then they transitioned very quickly to the stories about the love and saving grace of Jesus Christ. Now, I have been in churches that are a lot more fire and brimstone, so I am very grateful to my Sunday school teachers for how they taught us. But, how could I be responsible for the sins of my parents? That's not fair. That doesn't make sense. I didn't do anything. Now, at the time, I believed in God and Jesus and heaven and earth, but I tossed original sin off to the side. Before I'd even heard the term, I was a good little Universalist. Now, slavery has often been called the original sin of the United States, and we will never truly live up to our ideals that all of us are created equal until we can repent for the evils of the slave trade. And the more I study the history of our country, the more and more this rings true. But how do I square that away with my insistence that original sin isn't fair, that it's not even a useful concept? And I've been thinking about this for a few years now, and I'm still not sure I have the entire answer. But the answer I have now is this. Slavery wasn't my fault. The racist systems that were put into place and persist to this day aren't my fault. I wasn't there. I didn't set them up. And I'm against slavery. I'm against racism. However, I can see the damage those systems do to this day. I can see the physical, mental, and emotional trauma that is inflicted on the marginalized communities of this country, my country. I know these communities are at the highest risk from COVID, and they have the least infrastructure ready to fight it. So if this isn't my fault, what am I supposed to feel guilty about it? What am I supposed to do about it? And the answer to that, and for all of us UUs, as a religion bound by covenant and not by creed, we can do whatever we want about it. Once we learn about a system that's built on the oppression of our fellow human beings, what should our response to that system be? What will our response be? And we can approach this issue not as an us versus them or a black versus white, but an all of us together on the same team versus these systems of oppression. Now, it always surprises me how often a lesson that I was taught by my parents and grandparents as a young child can be applied to my life today. When you're invited over somewhere, before you leave, make sure you leave that place a little better than you found it. So, quick little tangent, sorry. I used to be a high school teacher. I taught math and social studies, and I really liked my job. And I'm talking about this topic today because I had and still have a lot to learn on it. And I want to share part of that educational journey with all of you. But I do worry that there will be some folks in the audience that don't have that much new to learn from what I'm saying today. You've done the reading, you've lived your life, you know a lot of this and more. So I did want to take a moment to teach you something you probably don't know. Well, if you're a native English speaker, you know this. I mean, you don't know that you know this, but you do know this. I don't know. Maybe we'll leave this place a little better than I found it this morning, right? So I'm going to say the same phrase twice. Most of you will be able to pick out the wrong way to say it and the right way to say it. So I'm going to go ahead and say the phrase the first time. That's a big old orange cat. And then the second way. That's an orange old big cat. First way again. That's a big old orange cat. And second way. That's an orange old big cat. Did you know that there's a proper order to adjectives in English? If you're a native English speaker, you learned it without ever being taught. If you had to learn English as an adult, well, this is just another one of the many reasons that English is incredibly hard to learn. So if you're interested in the actual rule, and this is according to Mark Forsyth in his book, The Elements of Eloquence, How to Turn the Perfect English Phrase. The order is opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose, followed by the noun. So, you can have a lovely, little, old, rectangular, green, French, silver whittling knife. But you can't really have a green, French, whittling, silver, lovely, old, little knife. And of course, like every rule in English, there are exceptions. Now, a lot of you learned this without being taught, without even knowing you had learned it. So between that and everything else we'll be talking about today, I'm confident everyone here will have learned at least something. And if you're still in school, ask your English teacher about this on Monday. See what they have to say about it. So, I want to talk about some terms that are used in discussions on civil rights and race. Some of these are maybe misunderstood terms or controversial terms. Don't worry, no slurs, promise. But I do want to make sure that we're operating on the same definitions, that we're not miscommunicating here. Now, the first is Black Lives Matter. I've been to your church before. I'm pretty sure I've seen a big Black Lives Matter across the side of the building before. So, you know. But in case, when people say that Black Lives Matter, they're not saying that Black Lives Matter more, or that only Black Lives Matter. They are saying that Black Lives Matter too. Too often in America, Black lives don't seem to matter. One example out of many would be the Tuskegee experiment. The U.S. government refused to treat black men with a very contagious disease, then sent them home to see how fast it would spread through their community. Now, this study was started in 1932 and was not ended until 1972. And these men were never told that they were contagious, and they were not told that they had not been treated. Now, quick dive into your church's website told me that your church opened up in the 1960s. So within the lifespan of this congregation, this study was happening. And that's why, by the way, the response when people sometimes will say, like, well, all lives matter, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter, right? You get it. Now, the next couple of terms are racism and white supremacy. Now, when I say those words, most of you probably think of hooded riders in the night burning crosses, or white people hurling racial slurs at minorities. And those are definitely examples of racism and white supremacy. But they're not the only forms of racism and white supremacy. Racism and white supremacy are, at their core, systemic. They are woven deep into the fabric of our society, and it can be difficult to see it if we aren't on the receiving end. Segregation still exists. It's illegal, just like redlining, but it still exists. And that doesn't stop some realtors and rental agents from only showing properties to the right buyers. And these people may not think of themselves as racists, and hey, maybe they aren't. I don't know. But they are perpetuating the system of racism by not showing a house in a mostly white neighborhood to a black family. And it's not about race, they might say, but property values or the culture of the neighborhood. And they learned it without being taught. Judges in America will on average, give a black person a higher sentence than a white person for the same crime. This doesn't mean every judge in America is a secret member of the Ku Klux Klan, but they have been conditioned from a young age to see black people as more dangerous than white people, less capable of reform and remorse. And they learned it without being taught. And too many doctors in the U.S. believe that black people literally have thicker skin and are less sensitive to pain than white people. Our doctors and nurses are not secret white supremacists, of course, but these medical stereotypes have existed in our hospitals for hundreds of years, and it will take time and conscious effort to expel those stereotypes. And these doctors and nurses, they learned it without being taught. The big, old, orange cat. And finally, privilege. This is the word I usually see a lot of pushback against online, even in some UU spaces. Now, people believe, I think, that if they acknowledge that they benefit from some privilege or another, that it invalidates their hard work, and that anything good that they have earned in their life isn't really a result of their own efforts, but just because they have privilege. Now, I have good news. That's not what privilege means. Privilege just means that, everything else being equal, you may have an easier time of things because of your gender, skin color, socioeconomic status, or ability status. Now, I am a cisgender white man that was born into a middle-class family. There are black Americans much more successful than me. There are women much more successful than me. There are people that were born into much worse circumstances than I was that are much more successful than me. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't benefit from privilege, but that also doesn't mean that I haven't earned what successes I have in life. It just means that overall, I have benefited from the status quo. As an example, when I was in college, I was rear-ended by a police officer in their personal vehicle. Friday after work, I had a paycheck, ready to go cash it at a bank when you had to go cash it in a bank. Now, the officer popped out of his car, checked to make sure I was okay. He called the police, gave the statement that he was entirely at fault, made sure I had all the insurance information I was going to need, made sure I was okay, and, treated it like it was his fault, because it was. Now, would that have experience gone the same way if I wasn't white? Maybe it would have. Maybe it would have. And maybe not. Would I have been able to get the same apartments and houses that I've gotten since I left home? Maybe. Totally possible. But maybe not. Would I have had access to the same college funding, the same social circles, the same professional networks? Maybe. But maybe not. So, to bring it to a more general thing with the UUs, Unitarian Universalists. You all know that if you ask a Unitarian Universalist to explain their religion, you better have a few minutes, right? You better have some time to have this conversation, because it's going to take a while. Now, in these conversations, a lot of stories will come out. Stories of early gay marriages, or at least civil unions back in the 1950s. Stories of defying the Nazis and helping Jewish refugees escape the Holocaust. Stories of our ministers and our members marching with Martin Luther King Jr. And those stories are true, by the way. They form an important part of our history, one we can point to with pride. We were there, UUs can say. We helped make the world a better place. And it didn't go unnoticed. Now, the UUA has an official certification process to show that a particular church is a welcoming congregation for members of the LGBTQ+ community. To this very day, there's a Jewish presence in our denomination. We have families with Jewish roots running through my home church of Westside, as well as the greater UUA. Beacon Press, the publishing arm of the UUA, regularly publishes the work of Jewish authors. And our legacy of marching with King, with Lewis, well, that one's a little more complicated. After Unitarian Universalists showed up to march after march, protest after protest in the 1960s, they attracted the attention of other civil rights activists. Many black Americans came to visit UU churches during this time period. And they were welcomed into the churches. They were given coffee and pastries, and they were shown to their seats, and they had a perfectly nice experience as a guest. And maybe there were some awkward questions. Where are you from? A well-meaning member might ask. No. Where are you really from? They would ask, meaning, what's your nationality or your ethnicity? And there's nothing inherently wrong with asking that question, but if someone were to ask it as one of the first things they want to know about a new person, that might send the wrong message. One UU of color told me that sometimes it can feel like the question that's actually being asked is, gee, you look different from all of us. Why? Now, most of the black guests left and didn't come back. They weren't offended or angry, but we gave them no reason to stay. One of the things our former minister, Dr. Russell Elvin, said is that Unitarian Universalists, we need to be a relevant choice. And in the 1960s, we weren't a very relevant choice to most of the people of color that tried us out. Now, some did stay, and they did their best to make a space for themselves in our church. They started committees to help focus our efforts as a denomination. They joined boards, they taught our children, and they spoke in our pulpits. Some became ministers. And in 1967, in response to one of the many race riots of the time period, the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus was formed. Black UUs were put in charge, and a couple of support groups made up of white and black UUs were started to help organize and fundraise. But black UUs were in charge. And this was it. This was our denomination responding to black voices. This was our denomination making a space for black UUs. This was our denomination welcoming them into our churches as family, not as guests, giving them a seat at the table. 1967. Then, in 1970, accusations of the UUA mismanaging the funds of the caucus emerged. The caucus officially split from the UUA later that year. Over the next few years, the group further fractured until it finally dissolved in 1979. Black membership in UU churches fell. Now, new organizations within the denomination, some in the UUA, some more independent, are representing voices of color. One such group is Black Lives UU, or BLUE. They have endorsed what they're calling the eighth principle, and they see a lot of potential in Unitarian Universalism. And this potential has always existed. Unitarian Universalists have stepped up to that potential before. We have given shelter to immigrants when they most needed it. We have saved Jewish refugees from the jaws of Nazi Germany. And we have resolved officially to become an anti-racist institution back in 1997. And now, we have a choice. Do we remain as we have been, an Abraham Lincoln of an organization? One that will work, however indirectly, to heal the damage done by racism and white supremacy, but an organization that will remain focused on our majority white membership? Or do we step forward into something new? Do we welcome Black UUs, Native UUs, Hispanic UUs, Asian UUs, LGBTQ plus UUs, UUs with disabilities, recognizing that one day all of us will fall into that category, and UUs of every size and shape into our churches as family instead of as respected guests? And I know at the top, I said I wouldn't do some twist reveal at the end about how it's really us that are the problem, that we Unitarian Universalists are somehow the bad guy, and I'm going to keep that promise, because I don't think we are. But there is a twist here at the end. The choice I offered a moment ago, that's not really the choice in front of us. We can't choose to stay as Abraham Lincoln, as a mostly white denomination devoted to our mostly white members. We can't choose that because we have already done work to move past that. Our ministers, our directors of religious education, our volunteers, and our other paid staff work hard to build welcoming spaces, intentionally. And here at Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff, you worked hard and went out of your way to qualify as a welcoming congregation. We did that at Westside too, so I know how much work goes into that. And I'm always proud to see that certification on our church's websites or on their bulletin boards or on their windows. Now, in my time as a Unitarian Universalist, I have seen sermons and reflections on civil rights, racial equity, and continuing calls to action in the in the service of our community. Our ministers have invited speakers who are Black, speakers who are members of the LGBTQ+ community, speakers who are Buddhist, Jewish, Zoroastrian, humanist, and they did this all on purpose. All of this for a reason. And our staff and committees receive training and discuss the ways we can open our congregation to anyone and everyone who wants to come. One day, when we can meet at the church again, we will set out the water bowl for any service dogs that assist their owners through our doors. We'll put fresh batteries in our hearing assistive devices. We'll put our name tags and our pronoun pins back on the welcoming desk. And we will look forward to the work that is still undone. And we will, all of us, create the future of Unitarian Universalism in North Texas, and the future of our community, the future of our country and our world. Let us make it one that we can look back to at the end of our lives and say with pride, yes, I was there. And yes, I left it better than I found it. Thank you all, and I'll talk to you soon.
Let freedom span both east and west, and love both south and north, in universal fellowship throughout the whole wide earth. In beauty, wonder everywhere, let us communion find. Compassion be the golden cord whose binding humankind. Beyond all barriers of race, of color, caste, or creed, let us make friendship human worth, our common faith and deed.
Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. To make an offering or your pledge, please go to oakcliffuu.org/donate and follow the links.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. De tio recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. De tio recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy.
Through Our Temporary Lives by Carl G. Seberg. Through our temporary lives, the great currents of history run. Let us keep the channels open and free, so not to obstruct purposes greater than our own. Let us keep our minds set upon the high goals that here bind us into one sharing fellowship of loving hearts. Amen.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez.
We gather together to join in the journey, confirming, committing our passage to be a true affirmation in joy and tribulation, when bound to human care and hope, then we are free. We gather together to join in the journey, confirming, committing our passage to be a true affirmation in joy and tribulation, when bound to